everyone. The negative impacts of smoking are well known, and its global decline will result in many positive health outcomes around the world. But there are negative consequences for low-income countries that depend on tobacco farming and as a thriving industry. This year, the Conrad Challenge was pleased to partner with the Foundation for a Smoke-Free World to bring a brand new category to the competition, tackling this deep area of neglect, helping tobacco farmers in these countries to create alternative products. Our first team is Aqualirio Labs from Mission San Jose High School in Fremont, California. Their innovation, Tabacchi, presents a line of topical skincare products created from tobacco-derived squalene. Please welcome Aqualirio Labs.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Vicky.
I'm Mishal.
I'm Gloria.
I'm Arnav.
And I'm Maggie.
We're Aqualirio Labs, and our innovation is called Tabacchi.
It would help if I turned it on for you, right?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Our skincare line Tabacchi solves two main problems. Number one, small-scale tobacco farmers are being hit by a decline in smoking. Let's take 2011 in review. 6 billion fewer cigarettes were sold, an optimistic trend. However, simultaneously, 420 million more pounds of tobacco were produced from the previous year. Now, despite the decrease in demand, it is simply not viable for these tobacco farmers to switch to a different crop due to the unique crop rotation that tobacco demands for a 4 to 5 year gap in order to switch to another crop successfully.
The second problem that Tabacchi solves is the overhunting of shark livers. Both tobacco and shark livers contain a compound called squalene, which is desirable in cosmetics for its hydrating qualities. Unfortunately, historical reliance on shark livers has led to the near extinction of some species and the destruction of the ocean ecosystem. The solution is driving squalene from tobacco.
Now, before we go any further, we need to make an important clarification, and that is the difference between squalane and squalene. Now, squalene is produced naturally in shark livers, tobacco, and in the natural human body as a sort of natural skin and hair lubricant. However, the problem is that when you expose raw squalene to UV rays outside, it produces these things called free radicals, which can actually damage your skin more than it benefits it. That's why in our product line, we must first extract the squalene from the tobacco and then hydrogenate it into its sister compound called squalene, which is just a lighter, more skin-friendly version of squalene. And once we do that, it's much more hydrating and much more protecting to the skin.
So, how does Tabacchi create our product? Tabacchi breaks down this process into 3 main parts. First, extraction, then hydrogenation, and thirdly, emulsification. During the first process of extraction, tobacco leaves are harvested, then freeze-dried. The dry leaves are then crushed and blended into tobacco paste.
So using that tobacco paste, we can place it into a reactor at 250 degrees Celsius along with an organic solvent. This will allow us to separate the paste into a solid product and a liquid product. The solid product we can just dispose of. We're not interested in it, but the liquid product contains squalene, which is a liquid at room temperature. So we'll centrifuge it a couple of times to skim off the squalene in a good amount of purity, and then we'll run it through a distillation process to increase the purity of squalene. And then we'll hydrogenate the squalene into squalane using a palladium catalyst. And finally, we'll add the squalane to emollients such as oils and gels, and finally create our skincare line, which is Tabacchi.
Now on to the marketing plan of Tabacchi. We break our target market down into 3 main parts. Firstly, females who are around 20 years old and older. Secondly, consumers who are looking for a very natural look in cosmetics. And thirdly, and most importantly, consumers who care about company ethics and environmental friendliness. Thus, we advertise our products as cruelty-free and vegan.
Let's take a quick look at the numbers here. The skincare industry is projected to be valued at $130 billion by 2019. Another statistic determines that natural makeup buyers spend approximately 80% more than the average consumer. Finally, the squalane market is projected to be valued at $211 million by 2021. Now, What should all this tell you? Well, we are pursuing a market which has high potential and that there is a positive growth for Tabachi in the future.
The market penetration plan for Tabachi can be broken down into two main steps. So starting with the first one, which involves licensing at already established beauty retailers like Sephora and Ulta to initially gain customer buzz. In addition, we'll have things like minimal product packaging, as referenced by the mock-up on the left, where you can see that the design in the palette is designed to accommodate and cater to the target market that Gloria had just talked to you about. In addition, we'll have a very aggressive online presence involving things like an online website to drive e-sales, as well as social media presence through things like beauty guru sponsorships on YouTube, where these beauty gurus can demonstrate the product to their fans and gain customer bases through that. Then, with all of this customer support, we can finally open stage 2, which involves opening brick and mortar stores for people to have sales in person.
There are three main sources of funding. The first is from popular crowdsourcing platforms like GoFundMe. The second is from angel investors. As we are a Silicon Valley-based company, there are thousands of nearby investors looking to invest in a local startup like Tabachi. And the third is from pre-sales. What we plan to do is to sell a small portion of the product for a discounted price before they are officially released, generating both publicity and revenue.
So our calculated prices per unit is around $19 per 70 milliliters of squalane-based skin cream, whereas it is $26 per 70 milliliters of 100% pure squalane oil. And then these costs are calculated from our expense fees of $54,000, considering lab rentals and also shipping costs.
And our projected revenue for the first batch of products, which is 3,200 units total, is around $65,000. This gives us about a 20% profit margin, which is quite optimistic, but we can use that to pay small third-world tobacco farmers more than exploitative big tobacco.
Tabachi has two main competitors on the market right now. The first is Synshark. Now, both of us produce essentially an extraction coming from tobacco. The difference is that Synshark produces raw squalene oil, which, as we mentioned before, can be harmful if put raw on the skin. So that's why Synshark actually doesn't market to consumers. They have an entirely different market, which is the cosmetic companies themselves. They give the raw product to these cosmetic companies, who then make the skin creams on their own. The difference is that Tabachi, we do the entire process on our own, which results in a lower consumer cost in the end. The second competitor is Biossance, and Biossance by far prices their products as almost 2 times the amount that we can price our products at. The other difference is that they extract from sugarcane and not tobacco, which results in a lower yield quality.
In summation, Tabachi provides a unique solution for integrating tobacco into a benign, high-potential market while maintaining great affordability in a cruelty-free brand.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, my name is Diana. I'm from the Foundation for the Smoke-Free World. Really enjoyed your presentation. Well done. And a great idea. So my question to you is, what thought have you put into how you will actually physically procure the tobacco? You mentioned being able to pay smallholder farmers a better price. That's fantastic. Logistics is a huge challenge. So what's your plan for how you'll start off actually getting your hands on the tobacco that you need?
So the way we go about planning to get the tobacco is to go to the same small farmers that are being used right now by the big tobacco companies. And the reason for that is because one of the largest issues with big tobacco is because they're one of the largest industries for tobacco. These small farmers have absolutely no choice but to sell to these very exploitive large companies. And that's why when you come into our market, where we offer an ethical product, one that doesn't affect people's lives negatively, then clearly you can see that, and also we're able to pay them a lot more, as Vicky referenced in her presentation, is that because of these two things, we're able to essentially take the market away from big tobacco and move it towards this much more beneficial product. And so we plan to get the tobacco essentially from the same small tobacco farmers that this exploitive big tobacco uses.
Good morning. Do you guys have any noted side effects to the skin cream?
I don't think there's any noted side effects. As we've told you before, squalane oil does exist on the market already, and we plan to test our products thoroughly on artificial skin cells in silico, which is when you use a computer model to test.
One key concern I'd have from a consumer perception point of view is that most people would associate tobacco with cancer and bad things. How are you going to overcome that in explaining the source being the same plant?
So for us, the main market value that we bring to the table here is the idea that tobacco can be ethical. So yes, I agree with you. It might be a little bit hard because right now tobacco does have that very negative connotation, but that negative connotation comes from the specific ads that big tobacco produces, which involve things like smoke, things like, that are very associated more with cigarettes rather than tobacco. Tobacco itself, if you actually look at it, it looks like a very friendly plant, really. It looks just like any other plant out there. So what we essentially plan to do is we plan to market it like a more ethical alternative to these other very bad uses for tobacco.
Right, just adding on to that, our social media presence will help with that because we are marketing to beauty gurus, which do cater to their fan bases, and they do have a quite loyal fan base.
So my question goes back to the farmer and how you plan to get that first early adopter to believe that this is a viable way for them to make a living.
We are going to make a contract with them, so that's part of our manufacturing plan. We do build a contract with them, and obviously the pay is a great incentive because we do pay them more for their tobacco than big tobacco does.
So, I'm sorry, are you still going?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm from the South, and when I see Tabachi, I actually think of tobacco. So may want to add an H into the name just because shorthanded, I call it backy. So when you talked about the process, you mentioned that there was a reactor. I'm a nuclear trained officer, so I immediately think of a nuclear reactor. I think you're talking more of some sort of furnace, right? Something to just cook the
That's
product?
correct, yeah.
Okay. When you talked about the process, you had disposal. What's the waste coming from this?
Just the solid product. So when we put the paste into the furnace, it would separate into a liquid product and a solid product. So we would just dispose of the solid product.
It's really it's really just harmless biomass. So it can be used for anything. It doesn't necessarily have to go into a landfill or something. It can just be composted for future use.
Okay. And then I guess the last question I have is, so you mentioned that sugarcane is already trying to do this, but it's a lot more expensive. How much sugarcane would I need to use to match your tobacco product? Or how much tobacco would I need to beat a sugarcane field?
Sure. So currently, if we look at the percent yield from tobacco, we're ranging at around 4%, which is what we expect to have for our product. Sugarcane also ranges between 3% and 5% as well, so they're really quite similar, except for the fact that we'll be, of course, selling it at a lower price, and we'll still be maintaining that same profit margin, reflecting it back to those farmers. So really the percent yield will, in the end, result in the same production.
Just to add on to that, another thing is that it's actually harder to purify squalene coming from sugarcane crops because sugarcane contains a lot more solvents inside the biomass. So that means that when you have to spin it in the centrifuge like Vicky was talking about, you have to do that a lot more times for sugarcane than you do for tobacco.
Just a quick question. My name is Mike. I'm from Camp Bismarck out in your area by Santa Clara. Just a very simple question. Who did you consider partnering with? Because it's really a fairly costly process to take it through. You're competing with somebody that actually markets to healthcare and skincare companies. So you're taking the whole process, they're only taking part of it. Who did you consider to partner with?
We would consider partnering with large cosmetics brands, but something very important to Tabachi is being able to control the production process from getting the plant themselves all the way to the creation of the product itself.
Yeah, I got controlling the process, but I'm just saying it's going to make it more complicated and costly for you guys. So did you talk about working with a processor or a large company to reduce your cost and increase your quality?
So one of the things we have considered is one of the most expensive parts of the process is just getting the lab equipment. So one of the things we've considered doing is actually going to university labs like at Stanford or UC Berkeley because they do have organic chemistry labs there that are capable of doing the processes that we talked about.
Thank you, Aquilirio Labs. Our second team is Neon from White Sands School in Lagos, Nigeria. Their innovation, Virtual Farm, is an agricultural and management application designed to help tobacco farmers with 5 core features: money management, farming management, livestock management, crops management, and tutorial features. Please welcome Neon.
Did you know about the consequences cigarettes has? We all know the negative impact it has on our environment. But did you ever stop to think about the negative impact it has on the tobacco farmers? My name is Modi Menashi.
I'm Osagumero.
I'm Afolabi. And I'm Bemi. Cigarette usage is set to positively decline because of organizations like the Foundation for a Smoke-Free World. But because of the reduced demand of tobacco, this will negatively impact on the income of tobacco farmers. It will take an average tobacco farmer 6 years to earn what the British American Tobacco's director earns in a single day, and 2,140 years to earn its annual income. This shows that the tobacco farmer earns the lowest income, while the multinational cigarette companies earn the most. And this is shown in the tobacco supply chain.
The tobacco supply chain starts from the farmer. From the farmer, it goes to a small trader, from the small trader to a larger trader, from the larger trader to a warehouse, and from the warehouse to a company who uses it as a final product. What happens is the price increases as it keeps going, which means that the farmers sell for the least while the companies make the most. That would tell us that there is a high need for a product to help tobacco farmers in this aspect. Yet, all current and existing solutions in the market have proved to be inefficient and contain many flaws, which brings us to our solution.
So Virtual Farm is basically an application that connects tobacco farmers to buyers who want to use tobacco to make products other than cigarettes. How it does this is by using the information it has on its database with the information it has collected from the farmer to make the best choices.
It has a wide array of features to extensively help the tobacco farmers in all areas to increase their income.
How it does, for example, if you want to know the crop a farmer should grow, it uses the location, like if you can grow best there, and if the farmer can afford it, then he also uses if we make the best income.
So it uses all this information it has and the information it's collected to make the best choices for the farmer.
As of 2015, according from the Pew Research Center, 15% of farmers have smartphones, while the other 65% of farmers have feature phones. So now, how do we reach out to them? Reach out to them using a USSD code, a feature alternatives don't have. Most banks are currently using a USSD code for services like sending money to people. But in our case, use USSD code for people who don't have smartphones.
To expatiate, what happens is normally many farmers wouldn't have smartphones. So this USSD code allows it to be used on all phones. It doesn't have to be a smartphone, it can be a feature phone. It will work with the USSD code, which is how we plan to reach our markets.
Our target market is mainly the tobacco farmers. We will be able to beat other farm management applications because not only produce the resources they need, but also take the resources to them.
So, as you can see, Virtual Farm has proven to be more efficient than other farm managing applications on the market. And this is our next steps to bring our product to the market. We have 4 main phases to bring our product to the market. The first phase will be completed by the end of this summit. This is getting all the components ready for Virtual Farm and getting all that it has to do and be able to do.
The next phase is organizing the factors that will be needed for its development, such as financing. The next phase is its actual development and publishing it to app stores, as well as getting the USSD code online. And the final phase is all that happens after it's launched, like its marketing. So we have a timeline for when Virtual Farm will be completed, which is going to be around November this year. And Virtual Farm, we have made many tests and research, and it is proven to be cheaper than other alternatives, while also producing a higher profit. Thank you.
Very good presentation, guys. Out of curiosity, how old are you?
I'm 13.
I'm 12.
I'm 12. And I'm also 12.
So a naval officer joins the Navy when they're about 21, and you guys beat some of their presentations, so well done.
Thank you.
So instead of finding a product for the farmer to sell differently, you're trying to retrain the farmer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
What happens is also we help them connect with others who have alternative uses for tobacco. For instance, if they have a product which tobacco can be used for, which isn't cigarettes, we help them locate these buyers so they can sell their tobacco crop to them.
Yeah, also congratulations, really inspiring. I just wonder whether you've looked at the use of similar applications in other areas of agriculture where we know they're being used. And were you able to learn from that in developing this app?
Yes, but the feature that our app has and our product has, which they don't, is the USSD code, which can reach them without them having smartphones.
Hi guys, nice job. You came a long way to stand up on the stage and just with confidence and charm tell everybody what you really believe in. So congratulations on that. So I just have a simple question. What work did you do? Did you talk to some farmers? Did you do any sort of customer surveys? Did you go out into the field and find out what tobacco farmers thought about this idea, how easy they would be to convince?
Well, about this, we took many market researches about the farmers, which is where we learned that many of them don't have smartphones. From there, we kept thinking on how to market our product to them, which is why we got the USSD code.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So talk a little bit more about that code and how that interacts with the farmer that doesn't have the smartphone.
Okay, how it works is, first you dial a number on your mobile phone. It doesn't have to be a smartphone. So once you dial that number, it's going to show some information on the screen, and from that information, you can start interacting with it. You can send messages, you can send messages to it. It's a way to exchange information without necessarily having a smartphone. It can be used by all phones and even landlines.
Very well done, guys. My question is, in terms of the actual development of the app, is that something that you are personally interested in your own subject matter studies, or who will you work with to develop the app?
In school, we have a coding club, and that gave us the interest of learning how to code. So because of this, we decided to make an app because we cared about our environment, and coding was one of our hobbies.
Okay, in terms of who is going to design the app, although we have designed several prototypes, we want to assign it to some developers who can have it more professionally made.
Thank you.
Great job, guys. Is there anything out there like your plan at all? Anything at all like that? The USD code seems to be very unique, right?
Yes,
Yes.
that's the unique thing about our app. That's the very unique thing about our app. There are other, our main competitors in this competition are like West Africa, Diagonal Plant, and Farm Logs. Like we showed you in the presentation, there was a table showing why our app was better between Diagonal Plant, Farm Logs, and West Africa. For example, our own, we don't need internet, but West Africa needs internet, Farm Logs doesn't need internet, and Diagonal Plant doesn't need internet. And our own works on, our own is not region-like. For example, Farm Logs, you have to be in a certain country for that app to work, but our own works on every single region. Thank you.
The idea that farmers are sharing is catching on. I saw a program on India where the Indian farmers are getting together and planting new crops and making a difference, sort of a cooperative kind of thing. So is this sort of a part then of your idea that farmers would begin to work together through this method in the local community, or is this a broader scale than that, isn't it?
Yes. Just virtual farm is a worldwide thing, helping all farmers. We made it so that there's nothing for a specific community, just it can help everyone to reach out and be better.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neon. Our next team is TransBacco from William G. Enlow High School in Cary, North Carolina. Their innovation, TransBacco, genetically modifies tobacco plants, providing a unique alternative to the growing number of expensive heart disease treatments. Please welcome TransBacco.
Good morning, everybody. We are Team TransBacco. I'm Caroline Wang.
I'm Sarah Wang.
And we are introducing a novel approach to heart medication.
600,000 diagnoses in just North America. 3.7 million hospital visits in just a year. Heart disease is the #1 cause of death worldwide, and it's an important issue in many American households. But with the rising costs of heart disease medication, it's becoming significantly harder for many families to pay for their medicine.
In a recent survey conducted by the American Heart Association, over 2/3 of the surveyors claimed that the low accessibility and the high price of current heart disease medications was a problem. But how would TransBacco solve it? And how would it tackle it? Our product, TransBacco, would genetically modify tobacco plants to accumulate an enzyme called ACE enzyme in its leaves. ACE enzyme, which is a critical component of most heart disease medications, is normally quite inaccessible and expensive. But by using ACE enzyme, we could be able to provide an alternative treatment. By producing more ACE enzyme and making it more accessible to heart disease producers, we would be able to lower the cost of your heart disease medication. But our process is simple, easy, and streamlined. First, we would genetically modify tobacco plants to produce ACE through the CRISPR-Cas9 genome editing system. Then we would fine-tune the output, and finally, utilize this novel production to create cheaper heart medication for American families.
But what makes TransBacco unique? Well, firstly, we're drawing from a low-cost platform. This means that we can ensure that ACE production quality stays high while maintaining low labor costs. To maintain low labor costs, we'll make sure that we won't design and designate new land area and integrate it into a new economy. Finally, because of TransBacco's large-scale production, that will in turn make a cheaper ACE enzyme, which will in turn make a more consumer-friendly product.
Secondly, with the tobacco industry's reach already well established, we can even access rural parts of America that normally lack medical care. Yet another prevalent public health issue is the lack of medical care in many rural areas, where in some places there are as many as 400 patients for one doctor. Because many rural Americans are not able to get the heart disease medication they need, by utilizing the large scale of tobacco industry, we would be able to make tobacco more accessible for them and also be able to give back to these small communities. Next, As I said earlier, as the tobacco industry is already well established, it would be less intrusive in these rural areas since we would not have to bring in another model organism for them to use. In addition, since tobacco can be reused and also the waste can be disposed in an eco-friendly way, it would be more sustainable and also more eco-friendly than other more expensive heart disease medication products.
Finally, like Caroline said, because the tobacco industry is already established, many farmers depend on tobacco for their livelihoods and incomes. But with many health campaigns slowly pushing out the usage of tobacco, many farmers are losing their incomes and livelihoods. So we want to offer them another option. That option is TransBacco. TransBacco will preserve their incomes and livelihoods while giving tobacco another better limelight and image. So how much will TransBacco cost? We estimate that around $10,000 will be used for research, $50,000 for prototypes, $6,000 for office supplies, $2,000 for events, and around $100,000 for labor costs. So overall, TransBacco will cost around $168,000. $168,000. Whoa, that's a lot of money. But to think that $168,000 could potentially lower the odds of death for every 1 out of 4 persons is quite mind-blowing.
But how would we, two high schoolers from North Carolina, fund $168,000? Well, our first option would be to work with the GlaxoSmithKline Discovery Pact, or DPAC, which is actually a program that takes budding science realizations and turns it and guides them through the drug development process. We have already tried to reach out to GSK or GlaxoSmithKline, and we believe that would be a viable option as they not only provide funding, but also lab resources. However, if that did not work out, we could always turn to the NIH, which funds over 19 tobacco-related projects every year and currently has 3 grants open for tobacco-related projects. And in addition, we could turn towards the Truth Campaign, which is a large-scale campaign aimed at giving tobacco a better image in the limelight, and it's actually funded by the Big Tobacco 5, which are some of the biggest tobacco companies in the world. With investments of over 41 million every single year, we believe that by also giving tobacco an alternative use that it looks very beneficial and has a positive impact, we could also get investment funding from them. If that did not work, we could always turn towards angel investors and private investment funding. The inaffordability of medication cannot be underestimated, and it is a critical issue that often affects almost every single American in every community today. With that said, with TransBacco, we are trying to make cost-friendly and consumer-friendly heart disease medication a reality for you. Thank you. We'll take any questions.
So what is the drug that you would lower the cost on that affects heart patients?
So there are many different drugs that actually use ACE enzyme and ACE inhibitors. It's actually responsible for around 20% of the heart disease drugs that we have. We would try to partner with GSK, which already has current heart disease drugs already, and we are basically sourcing the ACE enzyme to them for a cheaper cost, lowering the cost in the end. We could also work with Johnson & Johnson, which is actually the current leader in heart disease medications right now, and is often open to different sourcing platforms.
Thank you.
Well done. Just a quick question, clarification question about your cost calculations. Did you mention anything about how long you believe the research and development process will take? And did that factor into your cost calculations? And could you just clarify what the labor costs applies to? Is that in the research and development strictly, or were you bringing in some sort of costs in the growing phase as well? I wasn't sure exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So about the labor cost, firstly, we are believing that that will not only account for part of the research, but also for like the workforce that we will need to advertise and all other costs like that. And your second question, I think, was
how long do you think the process of actually being able to develop this genetic technology will take?
Thank you for your question. We know that to develop through the FDA drug developmental guidelines, it requires a preclinical trial and a clinical trial. The preclinical trial requires in vitro and in vivo, and we believe that the basic research will take around 1 year just to perfect everything and make sure there are no side effects on the tobacco plant. We would then do the preclinical trials for around 6 months, and then the clinical trials for around a year. In the end, we are ultimately targeting the year 2021 to have it ready on the market.
Thank you.
Good morning. What are the other sources of the ACE enzyme that make procuring it from tobacco most advantageous?
So,
ACE enzymes actually right now artificially produced, which is also why it's so expensive. So we want to make a more organic, like production way.
Yeah. In addition to that, it will not only be more organic, more sustainable, more eco-friendly, but also it will have less disposal waste, and the disposal waste that we do have will be more biomass, which will be better for the environment.
I didn't hear you mention anything about organizations like health organizations that would be concentrating on heart disease, on lung disease, typical things that are cancer related that tobacco is known for. Is there a way that you might take this and turn it to your advantage by partnering with people that really want to see something like this go forward?
Yeah, so I believe that the big tobacco companies actually invested $35.1 billion in the Duke tobacco research just to give tobacco a better limelight through the e-cigarette process. We believe that they would also be open to this, but regarding the American Health Associations, the American Heart Association is one of the major publishers who talk most about how unaffordable heart disease medication is for their clients. So because of that, I believe that they would be open to partnering with us. And also, GlaxoSmithKline and Johnson & Johnson are prominent health companies that do have connections to those kind of organizations.
So, nice job. I'm going to ask a two-part question. First, why did you choose this? Maybe you mentioned it, but what's your personal story? Is there some personal history why you chose this particular problem? And second, what did you each learn personally about going through this process? That means making the presentation and doing the research.
Well, our story behind this was actually we were first inspired by the insulin-producing tobacco plant, but then we realized, whoa, our family actually has a long history with tobacco, and both our grandparents actually are both heavy smokers, and one of them actually is a tobacco distributor. And because of his job, he has to test cigarettes, and that leads to a decline in his house, and eventually he has lung cancer now. So we know that tobacco is what he relies on for a living, but it's also the one that's like tearing him apart from the inside. So we want to make another option for him.
Yeah. In addition to that, I think we both learned a lot about CRISPR as a scientific innovation. We also learned about how tobacco and the tobacco industry works, and how the need for heart medication is quite dire right now. And it was honestly quite eye-opening for us, and we're hoping on pursuing more research on it in the future. Thank you for your question.
Again, I think a lot of very, very interesting, innovative stuff. I'd say the biggest, but one single application would probably be in hypertension, high blood pressure.
Yes.
By far.
Mm-hmm.
Again, since you did dive into CRISPR, as you probably know, there's a debate around if you're using CRISPR technology, does that require a GM label? And I raise that because that's also fundamental to some of your later discussion. When you mentioned organic, natural, well, if it's GM, it'll be by definition classified as not organic or natural. If it's CRISPR and we get a relook at that, maybe. That's one question. The second is that to do this, of course, you've got to have access to the tobacco genome.
Yes.
And I just wondered whether you're aware of where the state of play is on mapping the genome.
So we actually have the ACE gene already singled out. It's on chromosome 17 at spot 23.3. And because we also have past research with tobacco being genetically modified to produce insulin for diabetic patients, while they did say that the GM tag might be controversial, because ACE enzyme is a natural enzyme that we already do produce in our bodies, I believe that the kind of controversial tag that comes with that could be eliminated with enough advertising, because it is something, and it just brings up the upregulation of your enzymes. And yeah, thank you for your question.
So good presentation, a couple points, and then to expand on the first question. On one of your first slides, you said cheaper production. Medicine and cheap should never be in the same category.
Yeah, definitely.
You never want that, right? Cheap implies unreliable, it's going to degrade quickly. You don't want that in a medicine. Inexpensive implies you have the reliability, but you're not paying the huge price tag.
Yes.
I wish that you had expanded more on how you're actually going to make the product, because in one of the groups earlier, they had some waste, could that waste have been used for something else? I know with chemicals and medicines, there's a lot of chemicals involved with that. Could you use the biomass left over in something else? And with the question that was the first question, he asked about heart disease medicine. Bayer makes a huge push that if you take Bayer, you're not going to get to heart disease. So would that help in driving the cost of Bayer down, or is it after Bayer when someone's in serious heart disease?
To your first, to your first point about how we make it, well, we plan to freeze dry the genetically modified tobacco plant, then crush it up, and then that's how it's going to be made.
In
or
powder
fed.
form, yes. In addition, while we did use the word cheap, you were right that we should have used the word inexpensive, because we are keeping the same quality and actually making it a little bit more high quality, because the synthetic chemicals inside of it will not be negatively harming the human body. So while it will be more inexpensive for people to access, that does not mean that the quality goes down. In fact, it actually might go up. In addition, I think you asked about how it might work, and she talked about how the CRISPR thing would make the powder form easy for people to take. In addition, that means that we don't have to use injections to administer people their medicine, which would actually be another pro of this TransBacco product.
Thank you.
Thank you, TransBacco. Next to the stage is Team X Farm Smart from the University of Toronto and the Sathya Sai School in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Their innovation, called Hakuna Tobacco, works to educate and provide information to African tobacco farmers on how to modify their tobacco crops to alternative crops. Please welcome X Farm Smart.
Over 7 million deaths a year, over $1 trillion lost in healthcare costs and lost productivity. These are not about World War II figures. These numbers show the impact of tobacco around the world. Good morning, judges and audience. My name is Tejas.
I'm Madhu.
And I'm Devanshi.
Before this innovation challenge started, we were ignorant and only knew that tobacco was harmful to health and the environment. We never knew how much African tobacco farmers were exploited. As we all know, many African countries predominantly depend on tobacco exports. For example, 60% of Malawi's export revenue is from tobacco. The impact of reduced demand and exports of tobacco in these economies can bring a huge economical impact in these countries.
There is also a popular perception that it is very difficult to switch from tobacco farming, but researchers show that a lot of viable alternatives do exist. However, there is no unified, integrated, and agriculture value chain solution that currently exists in market to help the tobacco farmers make the change.
We, X Farm Smart, have stepped up to get ready for the 21st century revolutionary change with the aim of educating and supporting the farmers on alternate farming. To facilitate this, we have come up with the innovative mobile app, Hakuna Tobacco, which means no more tobacco cultivation.
Hakuna Tobacco is a one-stop digital farming tool which provides comprehensive information about alternative farming and helps the tobacco farmers make the decision to change. Let's see how this app works. Once the app is downloaded in the preferred language, a user profile is created. Next, it will take the user to a query mode where the following information is requested: current farmland size, current profit margin earned, any specific crop choice, etc. Once these steps are completed, the app will correlate and extract data from the cloud into a personalized dashboard.
The dashboard will provide a comparative analysis of all available alternative farming options, which include crops, supply chain channels, warehousing, market prices, expected profit margin, and change management support. We are using currently available technology in our solution. To name a few, DApp, weather technology, and GPS. Our solution is essentially collecting and retrieving the available data from multiple sources and making them flow into one source.
Our cloud database gathers information such as alternative crops, crucial climatic conditions for the crops, soil types, market prices, crop yield frequency, supply chain channels, and sponsor support contact details, and it is stored in a relational database schema. Our unique algorithm updates the database, creates a master index, and processes the data on a real-time basis. To complement our app, we have created a website which will help farmers connect with various funding agencies and provide many success stories of other farmers around the world.
Let's discuss the factors that may impact our concept. To name them, illiteracy, language, forces of multinational tobacco companies on the tobacco farmers, and lack of government support. We tried to overcome these factors by making our app transformative, unique, and user-friendly. Our app is innovative as it forms a digital triple partnership as a part of our integrated and transformative solution.
Our app is important as we are trying to help tobacco farmers and Mother Earth. Along with that, we are not motivated to make money off this noble solution. Our digital solution will provide the user with multiple language support and is easily accessible to our target audience in Africa. The growth of internet penetration in these African countries will be a great opportunity for us to reach the farmers. Since we cannot go and visit every farmer in Africa, we thought it would be important to develop this app to give the farmers advice and suggestions.
Let's look at the target audiences. Farmers will be the direct beneficiaries of this app. Businesses and enterprises can use this app to select a type of crop and in turn establish partnerships with the farmers and vertically integrate their businesses with them. Social projects, government agencies, and NGOs can use this app to help the farmers facilitate the change.
We did not find any direct competitors providing an integrated solution like us currently in market. Based on our research, we did note that there are some tools available, but after review, we strongly believe they are not focused on helping the tobacco farmers.
Our ultimate goal is to help the tobacco farmers in Africa switch to alternative farming through digital farming techniques. The question now is how to achieve this goal, for which our immediate first step would be to complete the technical testing and prototyping by March of 2019. In parallel, we will be working to collaborate with our partners to obtain their support and collect all relevant data for our database. As we are a nonprofit organization, we aim to distribute our app free of charge in the app stores.
Step 2, we will be completing our initial funding requirement of startup costs of $217,000 towards app development, research, testing, stabilization, and support. We have already reviewed this concept with various government agencies and other private investors. We have managed to raise approximately $60,000 for startup costs from various sponsors. At present, we are looking at $160,000 to bring our concept to reality. To maintain our venture, we're looking at $150,000 a year for operating costs towards database support, maintenance, and administrative expenses.
Our step 3 would be to market the app through social media, student communities, and volunteers, piloting our app in Malawi by June of 2019. To pilot our venture, we are planning to collect 250 smartphones and distributing them to our target audience in Malawi. Once our implementation in Malawi is complete, we will expand to other African countries. We've also established a patent for our innovative app.
We have now come to the end of our presentation. We strongly believe that Hakuna Tobacco App can change the farmers' lives by providing a viable agricultural value chain solution.
Together, we can achieve our goal of a smoke-free world. Thank you.
All right, very good presentation, guys. So there was one team earlier that said that a majority of Africans do not have smartphones, which eventually you addressed later that you would be able to distribute smartphones. Who's buying the smartphones? Is that you, or is that from people that are disposing their smartphones and you're repurposing them?
We're actually launching campaigns, and we're planning to partner with student communities and volunteers to do so, to collect recycled smartphones. And once we fix these smartphones, we're planning to distribute them to our target audience in Malawi, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. And for the pallet testing that we're doing in Malawi, we will distribute these phones to the farmers to give them a feel of the app.
Okay.
Thanks, and I love all the combined visual displays and the integration, really excellent. Of course, the quality of data that they're going to access depends upon having the data fed in. The quality of the alternatives also requires starting to build up even greater knowledge in the individual countries around alternatives. Do you think there are countries ready for that in terms of having the crop alternatives and the data that's going to help them make these informed choices?
Yes, I do think that all of these African countries are ready to switch from tobacco to another alternate crop, because all of these tobacco farmers have been exploited for far too long. We need to help them. We need to provide them with a better solution. We need to, help them in some sort of way. And we feel like the government would help us as well, because we're bringing them profit and economical growth.
To add on to that, we're also providing them a sustainable living, and we're helping them take care of themselves and their health, as tobacco can be very injurious to health.
So basically, in a nutshell, we're going to be, many countries would want to have this type of solution, as they're also already suffering, and they all want the need and an integrated solution to switch to an alternative crop. And we're providing them that integrated solution. So together, we can make a change.
So, good presentation, good job. But I focused in on the change management. You mentioned that several times. Getting people to change behavior, particularly when it's tied to their, to family income, is extremely difficult. So, tell me two things you're going to do to assume I'm the farmer. I'm a farmer and I've got a small plot and I have 3 children and our income depends on this. How are you going to convince me, other than use of the app, to change my crop mix, and give me a practical tip that I can choose to actually get started without converting my entire crop over 100%.
So another form of communication we're going to be using is volunteering from student communities. They will be from various colleges, universities, and they will also help the farmers navigate through the app and just explain to them what type of problem they're facing right now, and just give them more awareness about the problem they're facing about tobacco cultivation.
In addition to that, we're not going to make them change their entire cultivation overnight, and it's not going to all happen at once. We're going to take step by step, slowly, so that they don't face a decrease in their profit.
Yeah, and talking about how we are going to convince the farmers to actually adapt to our app, there's actually 2 reasons why the farmers would actually use it. Profit and sustainable living, as we mentioned before, because right now farmers are actually underselling their tobacco crops to big tobacco, and they're getting exploited and they're losing money. And if we guide them and let them see that there's other crops where they're going to have much more profit and sustain their families, they will be more convinced and at least try our app. As well, they will want a sustainable living for both their communities and their families.
I have a question for you. Perhaps you mentioned it and I need a refresher, but how many farmers did you actually interview and ask if they would use your app and get feedback from them?
So we have already interviewed farmers from Canada, as the similar implementation has been occurred, such as called the Tobacco Transition Program. So that also gave us somewhat of a vision to figure out what type of problem they're facing, and what a simple change we can make to the farmers to switch to an alternative crops. As in Canada, they've been cultivating ginseng instead of tobacco.
So why Canada? When you're thinking of being in an entirely different country with entirely different cultures, how does that translate? Convince me that that translates.
So basically Canada, like the government has a big backing to transition from tobacco to alternate crops, and we just wanted to see how it's been done in like real time. And this is just like a model, and we want to try following this model in perhaps like our 4 target countries, which is Malawi, Mozambique, Zambia, and Zimbabwe.
In addition to that, we've actually conferenced with the assistant of Member of Parliament. His name is Matthew Chikanda, and he's actually from Malawi, and we had an interview with him to see if the African farmers would like our app and if it would be beneficial, and he had agreed. So he's, we're still in the process of making connections, but he said he would help us connect with farmers in Africa.
Well done. My question is, so you have your app, you have some other activities mobilizing the community, as you mentioned earlier. Are you starting a nonprofit, or what is your intention, and can you comment on thoughts about how you can make this a sustainable endeavor? Because there needs to be updated data, you need to constantly be refreshing your app with the most current data, etc.
So basically, to start off, we are a nonprofit, and we're not expecting any money from this. And is this for a noble cause? And also and this will be updated on a real-time basis for like information such as crop data, market prices, crucial climatic conditions, and more importantly, the distribution channels data.
As well, with the data collection, we're going to use FAO, FDA sort of resources, as well as partnering up with businesses and partners that may help us with data collection, as well as lots of self-research. So, and we're going to update the data on a real-time basis, as we mentioned before in our presentation.
Thank you, X-Farm Smart. Our fifth and final team is You Have a Friend in Me from Hunter College High School in New York City, New York. Their innovation, Bamboozled, is a bamboo reinforced concrete which will replace the steel reinforced concrete used in construction. Please welcome You Have a Friend in Me.
On behalf of Team You Have a Friend in Me. So, there are 2 major harms of smoking highlighted by the Foundation for a Smoke-Free World, which are the harms to people who are actually smoking and preventable deaths and diseases, but more importantly are the impacts on low-income countries that are farming tobacco. These low-income countries, tobacco farming often correlates, or at least causes lots of poverty, corrupt governments, and low quality of life. So Bamboozled is going to try to give solvency for this by providing an alternative crop to tobacco, which is going to allow tobacco farmers to transition away from the crop, thus solving the problem. So what is Bamboozled? Bamboozled is a product of bamboo reinforced concrete. So what this means is currently most concrete is reinforced with steel, and this steel allows the concrete to gain resistance to like compressibility and damage, and makes the concrete stronger. So Bamboozled is basically just a higher quality version of steel reinforced concrete, where instead of reinforcing the concrete with steel, you're going to reinforce it with bamboo. But bamboo is a crop, it's a plant. It surely isn't as strong as steel, right? Well, it actually is very strong. So the reason that steel is used in reinforcing concrete is because it has a very high tensile strength, which allows it to reinforce concrete very effectively. But bamboo actually has a tensile strength 3 to 4 times stronger than that of steel, meaning that it is much better at doing the job of steel in reinforcing concrete. There are also ecological advantages of bamboo. So production of 1 ton of steel actually produces 2 tons of carbon dioxide, which contributes to global warming. But farming of an acre of bamboo actually absorbs 12.5 tons of carbon dioxide, which is very good for the environment. So if you were to use all the farmland in Africa being used to farm bamboo, to use tobacco, if you use that to farm bamboo, you'd be able to absorb a lot of carbon dioxide emissions, which is going to be very good for the environment and help provide solvency for global warming. So, and then there's also low resources required to grow bamboo. So one of the reasons it's so hard to find a viable crop to replace tobacco is because tobacco grows in arid and resource-poor environments. But bamboo can grow in virtually any environment, meaning that it would be a perfectly sustainable crop in these where tobacco is farmed. So, so this is just the idea of the bamboo reinforced concrete. So you'd have bamboo going in a lattice, and then it would be covered in concrete. So yeah, so there are 4 major steps in our plan, which are first we need to get the bamboo, then we need to cure it, then we have to manufacture it, and then we have to invest our profits. So to get the bamboo, we decided to center our business model in Africa because it's one of those low-income and underdeveloped continents with lots of places that farm tobacco. It actually exports 650,000 tons of tobacco per year. So if we use that to farm bamboo instead, that's going to be very good for the country. So then we need to cure the bamboo. So curing bamboo is basically the method of preserving it. It makes it more, it prevents it from splintering, it makes it resistant to water, and it prevents expansion. And it also gets rid of insects. So this is vital in making the bamboo up to that quality of steel so it's viable as a building material. Here. And then we need to manufacture the bamboo. So we need to be able to integrate the bamboo into the concrete. So we're not entirely sure how to do this yet because even with steel reinforced concrete, there's much research needed to be done in order to realize how to integrate it as best as possible. So we need to do some research in finding out how to do this. But the general idea is you put bamboo in concrete. Yeah. So then we have to invest the profits. So what are the profits going to look like? So for 10 million cubic feet of steel reinforced concrete, this number doesn't actually matter. It's just a calculation. This is a number that's easily able to do within the farmland in Africa. So with that much concrete, steel reinforced concrete, which is the status quo, the market that we're competing against, it's going to cost $375 million to make 10 million cubic feet of bamboo, of steel reinforced concrete. But bamboozled, it's actually only going to cost $33 million to create the same amount of concrete because bamboo is so inexpensive. And so what this means is that because of the affordability of bamboozled, we're able to have it, it's much cheaper. It's $3.43 to produce a cubic foot opposed to $37.66. So this means that we can make lots of profit from this. Concrete is the world's second most widely used material, and the first is actually water. So there's clearly a very high market for concrete, and we're going to use this market to sell our bamboo reinforced concrete. So if we were to sell it for $20 per cubic foot, which is just an example, doesn't matter the number again, we would make $165 million with 10 million cubic feet of bamboo. It could be scaled down if we don't have enough funding to do all of it, but this is just, again, an example. So what we want to do with our profit is we want to invest all of the profit after we've done our researching. We want to invest all of it into those countries, those low-income suffering countries that we got our bamboo from. So we're going to give them social services. We're going to try to stabilize their government and build infrastructure out of the bamboo reinforced concrete, which is going to help those countries come back from their poverty and bad status. So yeah. So in summary, we are stopping people from smoking, we're giving alternative crops, we're providing some solvency for global warming, and helping these low-income countries. So, yeah. Thank you.
Have you looked at whether or not the process for getting the bamboo ready to go into the concrete?
Yeah, so...
wait, I haven't finished. Whether that bamboo will hold up over time compared to steel?
Yeah. All right, so that's the process of curing the bamboo. So the idea of curing bamboo is you would heat it in 340 degree Fahrenheit heat for some time, and then what that does is it like makes it stronger, and it prevents it from absorbing like the water when it's in concrete, expanding, which would harm like the structure that's building, and it brings it up to that level of like steel.
So your cost per unit includes the process of heating?
Yeah, so that was all the extra costs. You saw like there were 5 columns, I believe, for the cost of bamboozle, but so that was the cost for furnaces, for heating it, for like labor, and for the gasoline used for heating it. But those aren't like necessarily final costs because we still need to do research, but that's like cost for producing the product itself.
I have one other question.
Yeah.
Is all bamboo created equal, or are there different qualities of bamboo where you would have a shortage of bamboo over time because people pick the best and leave the bad, and now you have a shortage of bamboo and your project fails?
Well, the idea of bamboo is we would buy like the bamboo from the farmers, so we would be buying like better bamboo if there is lower quality bamboo, but generally it's all of like a general like average of like it. Even if it's not like the best, it still can be used to have very high structural potential, and after curing the bamboo, it can be still used if it's not like the highest, best possible bamboo.
Thank you.
So you actually need to convince concrete companies to use bamboo instead of steel. How do you plan to do that?
So what we're going to do is, since it's stronger because it's bamboo is 3 to 4 times higher tensile strength than steel. That means that their concrete, if they use bamboo, is going to be much like higher quality. And also, since it's much cheaper, it's less than 1/10 of the cost to produce. But since it's still of like relatively same quality, possibly even higher quality, it's much more profitable for them. And when they buy the concrete from us and the bamboo from us, then we can use that money to reinvest it into those countries.
So I understand that you make a great case for it.
Yeah.
They probably have a lot of contracts with steel companies at the moment. So how are you going to get that very first contract that allows you to prove your concept?
Well, we can try and partner with them. Like, I'm sure they can add contracts. Like, they're companies, so they are obligated to some things, but they can still expand their companies. And we'll try to market it. We'll try to get some like companies will message them. We'll like contact them. We have I have some good relationships with some companies at our school who like sponsor the school, so we can try and do like that.
So I think that's a big issue, and I'm not going to answer your question, but I would just, every federal, state, and local governments have building codes about what goes in concrete, what kind of drywall you can use. I don't know if that would be a barrier, but it seemed like it would be a big one. But my question to me is, I'm not persuaded economically if I'm a farmer. Give me the economic case why I should take 1 acre out of production of tobacco and put it into bamboo. I don't understand per acre how am I going to make more money and how easy that's going to be to transplant and prepare the soil. Tell me more about that.
So we actually did the calculations on the profitability per acre of tobacco, and so we figured out that if we pay the farmers 50 cents per bamboo stick, then they'd be making about the same amount per acre of land of tobacco as they would be for bamboo. So our plan is we would be giving them several dollars, maybe like $5 per stick of bamboo, so they're making several times more than they are making in tobacco. And what this does is it makes it so that it's a viable option for them, and it makes it so farming bamboo is much more profitable than tobacco. So there's an economical reason for them to switch. And it doesn't really harm us because we can the low cost of the bamboo, it still costs less than concrete, or not concrete, than steel, so we can still afford it. And so it gives them an incentive.
So just a couple of questions. First, I don't think you made it clear whether the infrastructure that was going to be built was out of Africa or in Africa. And I raise that because obviously the greatest housing and infrastructure boom we're likely to see will in time be in Africa. And related to that, whether you thought of Dangote and other related. Dangote is the massive cement producer in Africa, who, if anybody was going to be interested, you'd hope they would be. That's the first question.
Okay, so the infrastructure that we're talking about is we want to take all of our profits that we have and we want to invest it back into those countries that we got the bamboo from, because they're devastated and like low income from farming tobacco. So we want to build infrastructure in those countries so that we can help them and like give them social services. So that's where the infrastructure is going to be. And yeah, we'd love to like partner with those concrete companies, if there are any in Africa. Yeah.
Okay. The second question is more an environmental one, and that is, what are the impacts of introducing bamboo into countries where there isn't indigenous experience of it? Is it going to take off like an alien crop and destroy the local environment?
Well, it's not. Bamboo isn't very like extremely invasive. I don't think it's. You can still like contain it, grow it, and like normally, it's not going to be acting as invasive because it's going to be grown on like private farmland and be contained. And when it's being put into infrastructure, it's going to be in concrete, so it won't be able to like invade and be invasive once it's inside the concrete.
Okay, so I don't have any questions because we're running out of time, but I have a couple points. Several times you said that the money calculation doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
You basically told me as an investor that my money doesn't matter. I do not, yeah, so nobody's going to be pretty happy with that. And then structurally, for concrete is very strong for compression naturally. It doesn't need rebar for reinforcement. The rebar is there for tensile strength, so that way it can actually pull apart. So saying that the bamboo has very good compression strength, I would actually be more concerned about its tensile strength, being able to pull it apart instead of
that's what I was talking about. Bamboo has the tensile strength 3 times or 4 times stronger than steel. That's what the statistic was. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, You Have a Friend in Me. And thanks to all of our finalist teams in the Foundation for a Smoke-Free World category. You presented some truly creative concepts, and our sponsors were blown away by your ideas. The judges will confer, and winners will be announced at the awards ceremony taking place Saturday afternoon. We will now take a short break prior to a presentation by Dr. Yak from the Foundation for a Smoke-Free World right here in Universe Theater.